Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. Excited to be here.
So, the first question I want to ask you is can you explain to me what you do like I'm a young child?
Yeah, sure. So, in its simplest terms, I work for a company called NAS Recruitment Innovation, and we are one of the leading employment branding and recruitment marketing firms. So, what that means is that you can think of us like an ad agency where we help companies find talent through marketing strategies and marketing solutions. So, unlike a general agency where we're helping, sell Coke versus Pepsi, we're helping organizations find great talent.
I'm curious, going to that Coke versus Pepsi analogy you just used. How do do you guys have some kind of a secret sauce, or maybe some way that you're unique in that sense?
We do. Yeah, absolutely. We have three ingredients that we use to help companies with their candidate attraction: the storytelling. So that's, helping companies articulate why they're a great place to work in a real, authentic yet compelling way. We also have technology offerings that help enable a better candidate journey and a candidate experience specifically on the career site, which we think is a really critical touch point. Then finally, we have recruitment marketing strategies. So think about these as kind of the top of the funnel strategy. So helping companies, lessen their reliance on the post and pray methodology of yesterday and thinking about things like social media recruiting, programmatic ad buying, digital offerings like retargeting, geofencing, the more newer, more sophisticated ways to find and attract talent.
Matt, how did you get into recruitment marketing?
I stumbled into it,
Yeah.
probably like most of my colleagues, right? I didn't even know there was such a thing as recruitment marketing. So I graduated with a degree in marketing. After graduating, moved out to Denver, Colorado. Just stumbled upon an encounter of someone who had an opening at their organization. Company at that time was called Nationwide Advertising Service, a previous version of our current company, and interviewed and got the job.
What's your zone of genius, Matt? So think of it this way, something that you're pretty much naturally good at that has helped you get to where you are today.
After 30 years doing employment brands and helping companies articulate why they're a great place to work, I think we've gotten pretty good at helping find that kind of art and science behind employment branding, helping to balance a story where you're being authentic to who you are as an organization, but also being, allowing some room for aspiration and growth within that brand. It's really tougher than it sounds. And over the years, you kind of learn how to balance that truth versus aspiration component.
That's a huge part of the tension in employer branding for those listeners and viewers who aren't aware, or maybe they're newer to the talent space. Working in an agency myself, that is definitely the truth, where you're balancing this is what is today, but where you want to be tomorrow, we also need to talk about what your goals are, because that also matters. My next question is there a time you've ever failed at something? But I'm curious if I could ask you, like, have you ever seen that happen just horribly wrong, where you tried to balance that and it went off, and what was the result, and what was the learning experience from that?
A specific example is back to that employment brand storytelling. Sometimes companies want to be more aspirational than what is actually going on. And that's a real problem. I mean, you're setting yourself up to fail in those scenarios. So we've had lots of conversations where you have to have hard pushback on, that balance between what's real and what's aspirational to make sure that you're delivering something that's going to be good for both the candidate and the organization.
Is there an example you can give me of a time where the client, they just wanted to be aspirational, you knew it wasn't a good idea? Are there any stories from that, like that, from your career, where that pushback was so strong that you said, well, let's let them have it their way, and
Yeah.
anything that resulted from that?
Yeah. I'll tell you where it happens most frequently is in the conversation of diversity and inclusion. What happens is companies have good intentions, and aspirationally they want to be seen as a organization that's accepting of all and that has representation at every level of the organization with unique backgrounds, but that's not the shape of the organization in today's environment. So pushback in the conversation is always around, you can't go to market saying that you have this culture when people will come in and see that there's no one that reflects them in the upper levels of the organization. Where the rub is you want to allow for some flexibility for that. So intentions are good, but it's not what's happening in today's world. So, letting them know that you're aspiring to that and that that's the future vision is always more authentic than saying something that you're not at present day.
How do you even get started? How do you even talk about if they want diversity, but there's not anyone on their team that represents that, or very few, rather than highlighting the one person, flag bearer of diversity within the company over and over and again in all their videos, which I've also seen done. It's not a good idea. What would you recommend to someone like that just getting started, or who wants to just get started, but they're aspirational but they haven't done it yet? Like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, is my question here.
That's a great question. And that's where some of the nuance comes in. So for some organizations, they will rely on maybe the few resources that they have that represent a diverse background, diverse thought process, and really rely on them to be the spokesperson for that future vision. For others, we found that it's okay to be honest about, where you are as a company. And people appreciate, especially the younger candidates, they want authenticity more than anything else. So they're really turned away by the collage picture of everyone from a different background and someone in the wheelchair and like that whole thing. Like, they do not like those rainbow pictures. They want an authentic look as to what it's on the inside. So, sometimes companies just saying, this is an area of opportunity for us. We're aspiring to be a better organization. We're not there yet, but this is on our roadmap and it's something that we're prioritizing. That type of messaging can really resonate with candidates in a way that those glossy stock images just can't.
I think we could use a lot more of that. And I think you're right. I think a lot of candidates are expecting more of that honesty about what their expectations are of the job.
And I would argue that it's in the company's best interest too. Pulling someone in under false pretenses or making them believe it's going to be something that it's not is only contributing to higher turnover and lower engagement and things you don't want as a company anyway. So
what's something you wish more people knew about in your world, Matt?
I wish they knew about my world in general. I don't think people in general understand the amount of tools and work and people dedicated to make sure that the candidates are matching up with the right opportunity. It's not perfect by any means. It's gotten a ton better than the past 20, 30 years, and we're getting better each and every day. And I think some of the new technology tools around leveraging video interviewing, AI tools, all that is helping that connection of people finding jobs that are really meaningful to them and companies finding employees that are a good fit culturally as well.
So what's one unshakable belief you have, Matt, that informs the way you do business?
Treat others the way you want to be treated. Part of my role nowadays is thought leadership. So I speak at a number of conferences around the country. I also do new business. And my mantra has always been, provide information the way you like to consume it, provide a sales engagement the way you like to be sold to. And I think people appreciate that. And it's surprising how often that doesn't happen. You get presenters up there who will just rattle off 100 slides with data, 1,000 data points. And you get people who sell, putting their own interests in front of a partnership interest or your person you're selling to's interest. And, that those shine through to me very clearly. And it's never the way I like to do business and never the way I like to operate.
What's a process or strategy that you found success with recently that you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners?
Over the years, I just realized there's no secret sauce. And my formula has always been to simplify it down to its most elemental equation. And that, to me, has been effort plus skill equals results. If you don't have the skill in something, sometimes you can overcome that by just putting in more effort, more horsepower against it. And sometimes when you have the skill, it at least lessens your reliance on having to put in all that effort because you know what you're doing and you've learned from your past mistakes. So to me, I haven't found a shortcut around that of, if you've got effort and skill, you'll be successful really no matter what.
All right. So what's something you think is overrated in the talent space these days, and what's something underrated?
I would say overrated is the conversation about generational differences. I've sat through a dozen presentations over the years of people talking about differences in the generations. And I acknowledge there certainly are some, but I also think that's attributed more to kind of your stage in life and your stage in your career, as opposed to anything that's super different about the generation that we grew up in. And, I just have seen so many exceptions to the rules that when you try to paint a generation with one broad brush, just no one fits in those dynamics. And you see so many exceptions. So I always find those conversations interesting. I think you can get little tidbits from them. So I don't want to dismiss it completely, but I also think that everyone is their own person, and there's a lot of differences within all of us. There are older people who are technologically savvy and younger people who aren't.
I saw something recently that Gen X, or no, I'm sorry, it's Gen Z has the most anxiety when it comes to technology because so many people expect them to know everything. I thought it was so stunning. And obviously, right, it's one of those studies of like broad strokes kind of so it's not everyone, but across every generation they surveyed, Gen Z had the most anxiety because they didn't want to have all this pressure on them to be the go-to in the workplace for being the technology gurus. No, the point of the article was, you might have to invest more in training your Gen Zers to, how to use a computer, a desktop computer. So they may have never, other than maybe high school, I guess, they may not know about some essential skills and email and things like that. So because they're so used to other technologies like texting and Snapchat. So I thought that was interesting. So what's something underrated?
I don't know if it's underrated. It's gotten a lot of attention recently, is the work from home phenomenon. We've just begun a new way in which to work, in large part. I think that because of COVID, companies have realized that you can be productive with a virtual environment or a hybrid environment. And it's going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle. And I think companies are really struggling with, some companies are embracing it. And I've talked to companies in Omaha, Nebraska who are loving it because they're able to now, instead of selecting from geographic, Omaha, Nebraska, or people who would relocate to Omaha, they can talk to anybody now. But I've talked to many more companies who are struggling with it, who have huge office spaces, who their culture is built around an in-person environment, and they're struggling with how to work in this new environment.
That's the key, right? Just because everybody wants that doesn't mean everyone's prepared for that. Managers aren't prepared for that. I was talking with another person on this podcast recently, Kara Kirby, and she was talking about how she wanted more companies to invest in leadership training for their managers so that they could learn to be more collaborative in the new era of remote hybrid work. It's more important than ever. And so that's a new skill I think managers have never learned, the middle managers. All right, last question for today, Matt. What bit of advice would you give your younger self?
Probably just to be patient. Probably like a lot of younger folks, I was focused on success and doing the best I could, sometimes to a fault. Didn't always appreciate it when I did have success and didn't always, take time to enjoy it. And I remember, working on vacations and things that I wish I wouldn't have done earlier in my career. And it's easy to say now, but as I've gotten older, I've come to find more of a balance on things I can control, things I can't, and really appreciating what I've got. And that's probably what all old people say to their younger selves, right?
It's like, it's a common one. You're not the first to mention that. I had a couple of folks I think have said that so far, and it's a really good point. I don't know why we all think there's such a race to get there, wherever there is, right, in our 20s and 30s. Well, Matt, where can somebody learn more about you?
So I am on LinkedIn and Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. But you can find me on our website, nasrecruitment.com. And of course, if you find me on LinkedIn, I'm always happy to connect and share information with anyone who wants.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Justin. It's been great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Journey podcast with your host, Justin Vaco. To learn more about Dialogue, visit recruitwithdialogue.com.